Imagine a dark cave where a group of people has been imprisoned since birth. They are chained in such a way that they can only face one wall of the cave. They cannot turn their heads or move their bodies. Behind them is a large fire, and between the fire and the prisoners, there is a walkway where other people pass by, carrying objects like statues and tools. Since the prisoners cannot see what is behind them, all they can observe are the shadows cast on the wall in front of them. They hear echoes of the voices from the people passing behind, but cannot see the actual people or objects. To the prisoners, these shadows and echoes are their reality because they have never experienced anything else. They believe the shadows are the real objects and interpret the world based on this limited perspective. One day, suppose one prisoner manages to break free. At first, he would be blinded by the firelight, as his eyes are used to the dark. This represents the initial discomfort when encountering new truths or ideas that challenge established beliefs. As the prisoner slowly adjusts, he realizes that the objects causing the shadows are real things, not just shapes on the wall. This is a shocking discovery. Everything he believed about the world turns out to be wrong. If he ventures further outside the cave into the world above, he would experience natural sunlight for the first time. At first, it would hurt his eyes, but as his vision adjusts, he would see trees, rivers, and the sky. He would understand that the sun is the ultimate source of light and life. This represents the truth and knowledge, a deeper understanding of reality beyond illusions. Feeling enlightened, the freed prisoner might return to the cave to share his discovery with the others. However, the other prisoners, still chained and only familiar with shadows, would reject his story. They might even consider him mad, thinking the outside world is an illusion. This shows how difficult it is to change people's beliefs when they are comfortable in their limited understanding. People often resist new knowledge if it contradicts what they already know. The shadows on the cave wall symbolize illusions and limited understanding. Humans, like the prisoners, often rely on what they see and hear, assuming it is the complete truth. In reality, perception is limited, and true knowledge comes from questioning and exploring beyond appearances. The journey out of the cave represents the process of education and learning. Knowledge requires effort, struggle, and an open mind. Like the prisoner who adjusts to sunlight, gaining wisdom is a gradual process. People often resist new ideas because they challenge their comfort zone. The other prisoners refuse to believe the escaped prisoner because accepting the truth would force them to reconsider their entire worldview. In Plato's view, philosophers are like the freed prisoner. They can see beyond illusions and help others gain true knowledge. However, society may not always appreciate or trust them. Throughout history, many scientific truths faced resistance at first. For example, when Galileo suggested that the Earth revolves around the sun, people thought he was insane because they were used to thinking Earth was the center of the universe. Nowadays, people often accept what they see on social media or news outlets without questioning its accuracy. This is similar to prisoners believing shadows are reality, highlighting the importance of critical thinking. The allegory can apply to self-awareness. People stuck in toxic habits or limited thinking might only realize the need for change after experiencing something transformative. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is a timeless metaphor about human understanding, knowledge, and ignorance. It teaches that reality is much deeper than what we perceive through our senses. True wisdom comes from seeking knowledge beyond appearances, even when it is uncomfortable or challenging. The allegory reminds us to question, learn, and grow, always striving to escape the cave of limited understanding. The golden mean is a central concept in the philosophy of Aristotle, one of the greatest thinkers of ancient Greece. He introduced this idea in his work Nicomachean Ethics, where he explored how people can live a good and virtuous life by practicing moderation. According to Aristotle, virtue lies between two extremes: excess, having too much of something, and deficiency, having too little. He believed that a good life comes from finding the right balance, a mean, between these extremes. This balanced point is the golden mean. Virtue for Aristotle means being good at something in both character and action. It's about making the right choices to live a meaningful and moral life. Virtue isn't about perfection, but about consistently making balanced decisions. But why a mean? Aristotle observed that people often fall into bad behavior by going to extremes. For example, too much honesty can be hurtful, bluntness. Too little honesty leads to dishonesty. The mean is the right amount, adjusted for the situation. It's not the same for everyone or every context. It depends on the individual and circumstances. Aristotle believed that the path to happiness, or eudaimonia, comes from practicing virtues. Living in the mean ensures we make choices that lead to personal fulfillment and social harmony. The golden mean requires self-awareness and reflection. We must evaluate our actions constantly to stay balanced. For example, someone learning to be courageous might need time to distinguish between bravery and recklessness. Aristotle believed that moral character is built through practice. No one is born perfectly virtuous. People learn through experience and habit. Just like learning a skill, practicing the golden mean turns good behavior into a habit. What counts as a mean depends on the situation. Being generous during a crisis might require more sacrifice than during normal times. The right mean is different for everyone. A skilled athlete's balance in exercise might seem extreme to someone new to fitness. Emotions like anger or fear can cloud judgment, making it hard to find balance. Aristotle recognized that humans are emotional beings and must work on emotional regulation. In today's world, practicing moderation helps in daily decisions, like balancing work and rest or saving money while enjoying life. A good leader practices the golden mean by being firm but fair, decisive but thoughtful, ensuring justice without being overly strict or too lenient. Healthy relationships thrive on mutual respect and balanced communication. Being overly dependent can be suffocating, while being too distant can harm intimacy. Aristotle's golden mean helps create a framework for making ethical decisions. It promotes rational thinking and choosing how to act in a morally good way. Aristotle teaches that living well means developing practical wisdom, which he called phronesis, the ability to judge what the golden mean is in different life situations. Aristotle's golden mean is a timeless guide for living a balanced, meaningful, and ethical life. It encourages moderation in thoughts, feelings, and actions while acknowledging that finding balance is a personal journey. This philosophy reminds us that extremes, whether in behavior, desires, or beliefs, lead to problems, while moderation leads to true happiness and a good life. Confucian Ethics refers to a moral philosophy rooted in the teachings of Confucius, Confucius, a Chinese philosopher who lived from 551 to 479 BCE. His ideas formed the foundation of East Asian culture, influencing societies in China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Confucian Ethics focuses on moral behavior, social harmony, and personal virtue, emphasizing how individuals should behave in their personal lives and within society. At its core, Confucian Ethics is about building a harmonious society through the cultivation of good character, proper relationships, and respect for social roles. One of its most famous principles is filial piety, respect for parents, which serves as an example of how personal virtue contributes to family and societal harmony. Confucius believed that human beings could improve themselves through moral education and proper behavior. His philosophy is centered on several core values. First, Ren meaning humaneness or benevolence. Ren is often translated as kindness or humaneness. It reflects the idea of showing compassion and caring for others. It's like helping a stranger in need without expecting anything in return. But why it matters? Ren is the highest virtue in Confucian ethics. Confucius believed that being kind and compassionate helps maintain peace in society. Another principle is called Li, meaning rituals and proper conduct. Li refers to rituals, manners, or etiquette, the proper way to behave in all aspects of life. This includes how people greet each other, conduct ceremonies, and behave in daily interactions. For example, bowing respectfully to elders, celebrating cultural festivals with proper traditions. Li helps people behave respectfully and maintain social order. It ensures that everyone understands their role in society and acts accordingly. Xiao is another principle which means respect for parents. Filial piety means respecting and honoring one's parents, elders, and ancestors. It emphasizes family loyalty, obedience, and taking care of aging parents. A son caring for his elderly mother with patience and love, honoring parents by listening to their advice and fulfilling their wishes. Confucius believed that family is the foundation of society. If families are strong and loving, the entire community will be peaceful and harmonious. Next principle is Yi. Yi is the virtue of doing what is morally right, even if it is difficult or goes against personal interests. Returning a lost wallet full of money rather than keeping it. A judge ruling fairly despite pressure from powerful figures. Yi ensures that people act with integrity and uphold justice, helping to create a fair society. Another principle is Zi, which means wisdom or moral knowledge. It involves making wise decisions based on learning, reflection, and experience. For example, a wise teacher guiding students on how to live a virtuous life, choosing peace over conflict after understanding the consequences of war. Wisdom helps individuals distinguish right from wrong and leads to better decisions in life and leadership. Next, zhong, which means loyalty. Loyalty means being committed and faithful to one's family, community, and country. It's like a loyal friend standing by someone through difficult times, or a government official serving the country honestly and with dedication. Loyalty strengthens trust and bonds between individuals and groups, ensuring social stability. Confucius believed that family relationships were the basis for a well-ordered society. A family where respect, kindness, and duty are practiced creates individuals who naturally contribute to a peaceful community. A society where children respect their parents and parents care for their children creates an atmosphere of mutual trust and love. Leaders must be virtuous role models, setting examples through good character and ethical governance. A fair and compassionate ruler earns the loyalty and respect of the people, ensuring peace without the need for force. Confucius stressed lifelong learning and self-improvement. People should study philosophy, history, and ethics to become better individuals. Students learning about Confucian virtues might become ethical leaders and responsible citizens. Everyone has specific roles, and fulfilling these roles properly leads to a harmonious society. A king should rule with fairness, and citizens should obey the law while striving to be good members of the community. The Four Noble Truths are the foundation of Buddhist philosophy, introduced by Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha, over 2,500 years ago. Buddha's teachings aim to explain the nature of suffering and provide a path toward enlightenment, a state of profound inner peace and freedom from suffering. His teachings are not just religious ideas, but practical insights into human life that remain relevant today. The Four Noble Truths are like a doctor's diagnosis and treatment for human suffering. Buddha first identifies the problem or suffering, examines its cause, provides a cure, and prescribes a method for healing. The first noble truth, dukkha, the truth of suffering. Life is full of suffering. Suffering is part of the human experience and cannot be avoided, no matter how fortunate or privileged one might be. Buddha described different forms of suffering: physical suffering like illness, old age, and death; emotional suffering like sadness, fear, frustration, and loneliness; existential suffering, the feeling that life is incomplete or unsatisfying even when things seem good. For examples, losing a loved one causes emotional pain. Physical discomfort from an injury causes bodily suffering. Feeling restless or dissatisfied even after achieving success illustrates existential suffering. Acknowledging suffering as a reality is not pessimistic. Instead, it's the first step toward understanding and overcoming it. The second noble truth, samudaya, the cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is craving or desire. People suffer because they are constantly attached to things, people, or ideas. Buddha identified three major roots of suffering, often called the three poisons. First, greed, wanting more wealth, possessions, or power. Second, hatred, feelings of anger, resentment, and hostility. Third, delusion, ignorance of the true nature of reality. It's like craving wealth leads to stress and anxiety. Holding grudges creates emotional pain. Ignoring life's impermanence causes disappointment when things change. By understanding the cause of suffering, attachment, and desire, we can start reducing it. Buddha taught that life's pleasures are temporary, and that chasing them only leads to frustration. The third noble truth, nirodha, the end of suffering. Suffering can be overcome by letting go of craving and desire. This state of freedom from suffering is called nirvana, which means enlightenment, where the mind becomes peaceful, free, and fully aware. Nirvana is a state of complete liberation from greed, hatred, and ignorance. It is described as inner peace, clarity, and a deep understanding of life's reality. It is not a place or heaven, but a mental state of complete freedom. A person who no longer clings to wealth can be generous without fear of losing possessions. Someone who accepts the impermanence of life can face challenges with calmness. Ending suffering comes from acceptance, mindfulness, and letting go of unhealthy attachments. The fourth noble truth, magga, the path to end suffering. The path to ending suffering is the Eightfold Path, a guide to ethical and mindful living. This path leads to spiritual development and enlightenment. Right view, which means understanding the Four Noble Truths. Right intention, which means having good intentions driven by kindness and compassion. Right speech meaning speaking truthfully and kindly. Right action meaning acting ethically and avoiding harm. Right livelihood, which means earning a living in a moral and non-harmful way. Right effort meaning cultivating positive thoughts and attitudes. Right mindfulness means being aware of the present moment. Right concentration means practicing deep meditation to achieve mental clarity. For example, a person practicing right speech avoids gossiping or lying. Right mindfulness can be cultivated through meditation, yoga, or breath awareness. The Eightfold Path is a practical guide to living a balanced life that reduces suffering through ethical behavior, mindfulness, and wisdom. Meditation is one of the most common and effective ways to apply the Four Noble Truths in daily life. Through meditation, people can observe their thoughts without reacting to them. They can let go of craving and reduce anxiety. Practicing mindfulness can improve emotional stability and increase self-awareness. Someone feeling stressed at work can meditate for a few minutes each day, focusing on their breath. This helps them stay calm, manage negative emotions, and gain perspective. Buddha's Four Noble Truths offer profound wisdom about life, suffering, and inner peace. They teach that while suffering is inevitable, understanding its cause can lead to liberation through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. This timeless philosophy continues to inspire millions around the world, offering a path to happiness, peace, and spiritual awakening. St. Augustine of Hippo, one of the most influential Christian philosophers and theologians, developed a profound understanding of time. He was deeply interested in how time relates to both God and human experience. His reflections on time were not just philosophical, but also spiritual, aiming to understand life, creation, and eternity. According to Augustine, time is a creation of God, existing only because of God's divine will. He believed that before creation there was no time, only God's eternal presence. He argued that time did not exist before creation. He explained that God exists outside of time because God is eternal and unchanging, while time involves change, movement, and events happening one after another. In his view, time was created alongside the universe, meaning that time itself is part of creation, not something that existed independently. He challenged the common idea of time as something infinite or eternal. He explained that God is timeless, existing in a state of eternal now. For humans, time is experienced as past, present, and future, but for God, everything is present all at once. He reasoned that God's eternal nature allows him to see the entire timeline of creation in a single, unified perspective. While God exists outside time, humans are bound by it. Augustine reflected deeply on how humans experience time, dividing it into three parts: past, present, and future. He pointed out that these three aspects are not equally real. The past no longer exists. It is only a memory stored in the mind. For example, recalling childhood memories brings the past into the present through thought, but the events themselves are gone forever. The present moment is fleeting and constantly changing. The present is so brief that it almost disappears as soon as we try to grasp it. What is the present but a moment that becomes the past instantly? The future does not yet exist, it is only imagined or anticipated. For example, making plans for a vacation exists in the mind as hope or expectation, but the future event itself is uncertain. For Augustine, thinking about time was not just a philosophical exercise, but a way to deepen spiritual understanding. He believed that reflecting on time helps people become more aware of God's eternal nature and their own spiritual journey. He encouraged believers to remember the past with gratitude, live in the present with intention, and trust God for the future. Because the future is uncertain and beyond human control, he urged believers to trust in God's plan, finding comfort in God's eternal presence. His analysis of time is closely linked to memory. He suggested that human consciousness creates time by holding memories of the past, experiencing the present, and imagining the future. Time, therefore, exists in the mind as a series of remembered, experienced, and anticipated events. A central theme in Augustine's concept of time is the contrast between time and eternity. He described time as finite and constantly changing, while eternity is unchanging, infinite, and beyond human understanding. Eternity belongs to God, who exists outside time, while humans live within the changing flow of time. This idea has inspired theological discussions about life after death, heaven, and eternal salvation. If time ends when life ends, then the soul's destiny must exist in eternity, where God's presence is constant and timeless. His concept of time is a profound exploration of human existence, memory, and eternity. He saw time as a creation of God, with the past, present, and future existing only in the human mind. His reflections encourage a deeper understanding of life's fleeting nature and the eternal reality of God's presence. St. Thomas Aquinas is known for developing the theory of natural law, a cornerstone of moral philosophy and ethics. His ideas combined ancient Greek philosophy, especially Aristotle's teachings, with Christian theology. Aquinas believed that morality is rooted in human nature and guided by reason. Human beings have an innate ability to understand what is right and wrong through reason, even without religious instruction. The world operates according to a divine order established by God, and humans, as rational beings, can discover this order by observing nature and applying reason. Natural law refers to a system of moral principles that exist naturally and can be understood through human reason. Unlike laws created by governments, natural law is universal, meaning it applies to all people regardless of culture, religion, or time. Humans are naturally inclined toward goodness, justice, and virtue because they are created by God. Aquinas distinguished between eternal law, God's perfect plan, and natural law, human understanding of God's order. He taught that even people who do not believe in God can still grasp basic moral truths because these truths are built into human nature. Natural law is accessible to everyone. He outlined certain fundamental principles that form the basis of natural law. These principles guide human actions toward achieving what he called the highest good, also known as eudaimonia in Aristotle's philosophy. These principles are self-evident and understood through reason. He identified 5 primary precepts that humans are naturally inclined to follow. These precepts are broad moral guidelines that reflect what is essential for human survival and flourishing. 1. Preservation of life. Humans have a duty to protect and preserve their own lives and the lives of others. The belief that killing an innocent person is wrong comes from this principle. The right to life is considered a natural law. 2. Reproduction. Humans are naturally inclined to continue the species through reproduction. 3. Education of the young. Parents and communities have a moral duty to educate and raise children to become good citizens and moral individuals. 4. Living in society. Humans are social beings and should live in communities governed by justice, cooperation, and fairness. 5. Worshipping God. Aquinas believed humans have a natural inclination to acknowledge and worship a higher power. Religious freedom and laws respecting religious practices are inspired by this belief. These precepts are considered absolute and universal, meaning they apply to all human beings, regardless of culture or time. Humans have free will and are responsible for their actions. While humans are naturally inclined to follow natural law, they can choose to act against it due to ignorance, emotions, or selfish desires. However, Aquinas believed that reason and conscience guide humans back toward moral behavior. For example, a person who steals money violates natural law because theft harms others and disrupts social harmony. However, if the theft was committed out of extreme poverty and desperation, Aquinas would argue that moral responsibility depends on understanding the individual's circumstances. Aquinas' natural law theory has faced criticism over time. Critics say that not all societies share the same moral values, challenging the universality of natural law. Some modern thinkers argue that morality should be based on human reason alone, without involving religious ideas. Avicenna, a Persian philosopher, is best known for his contributions to philosophy, medicine, and metaphysics. Avicenna's concept of the soul is rooted in the traditions of Greek philosophy, especially the works of Plato and Aristotle, which he interpreted through the lens of Islamic theology. His theory of the soul focuses on its immortality, nature, and development through intellectual growth, emphasizing that the soul is eternal, separate from the body, and capable of achieving higher knowledge through reason and intellect. Avicenna believed that the soul is an immaterial, spiritual entity distinct from the body, but connected to it during earthly life. He viewed the soul as a rational being created by God and capable of intellectual growth through knowledge, reason, and understanding of divine truths. Unlike physical objects, the soul does not decay or perish after death, which supports his belief in the soul's immortality. According to Avicenna, the human being is composed of two essential parts, the body and the soul. The soul is created directly by God and enters the body at birth. Although connected to the body, it is independent and eternal. When the body dies, the soul continues to exist, free from physical limitations. This belief in the separation of soul and body is central to Avicenna's philosophy. Avicenna expanded on Aristotle's idea of the soul, but developed it further by categorizing the soul into three levels. The vegetative soul for growth and reproduction. This level is shared with plants and represents basic biological functions such as growth, nutrition, and reproduction. For example, a plant absorbs water and grows, fulfilling its vegetative functions. In humans, this level is responsible for similar biological processes. The animal soul for sensation and movement. This level is shared with animals and includes sensation, movement, and desires. It allows creatures to react to their environment, experience emotions, and pursue basic survival instincts. For example, an animal feels hunger and searches for food. Humans also have this part, which controls emotions like fear, anger, and pleasure. The rational soul for reason and intellect. This is unique to humans and allows for reasoning, thinking, and spiritual understanding. It enables humans to reflect, gain knowledge, and connect with the divine. The rational soul seeks truth, wisdom, and eternal happiness. For example, a philosopher contemplating the meaning of life is using the rational soul. One of Avicenna's most famous contributions is his flying man thought experiment, designed to prove the soul's existence and its independence from the body. He asked the reader to imagine a person created fully formed but suspended in the air, with no sensory input, no sight, hearing, touch, or awareness of the body. Despite the absence of sensory experiences, Avicenna argued that this person would still be aware of their own existence because self-awareness comes from the soul, not the body. This inner awareness, independent of the senses, proves that the soul exists separately from the physical body. Avicenna believed that the soul is immortal because it is spiritual and non-material, unlike the body, which is physical and temporary. He argued that the soul cannot be destroyed because it does not depend on the body for its existence. Soul lives on after death, continuing its intellectual journey toward the ultimate truth, which is God. Soul seeks knowledge and spiritual enlightenment, which helps it ascend to a higher state after the body's death. For Avicenna, the afterlife is a continuation of the soul's intellectual and spiritual development. If the soul has lived a virtuous life, growing in wisdom and understanding, it will reunite with the divine and experience eternal happiness. If the soul has been ignorant or morally corrupt, it will be distant from God, experiencing separation and suffering. Avicenna emphasized that the soul develops through the pursuit of knowledge, learning, and moral virtue. He believed that the ultimate goal of the soul is to perfect itself by gaining knowledge of the highest truths, especially understanding God's nature. This intellectual development occurs through acquiring knowledge about the world through reason and study, thinking deeply about life's meaning and the universe's purpose, engaging in virtuous deeds and following a moral life to grow closer to God. Theory of the soul is a remarkable blend of philosophy, science, and theology. His belief in the soul's immortality, its capacity for intellectual growth, and its spiritual destiny has left an indelible mark on world philosophy. His work bridges Eastern and Western thought, showing how reason, spirituality, and the search for truth are deeply connected. His legacy continues to inspire modern philosophy, psychology, and religious studies. René Descartes, a French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist, is considered the father of modern philosophy because of his groundbreaking work in understanding human existence, knowledge, and reality. His famous phrase, cogito, ergo sum, which translates to "I think, therefore I am," emerged from his quest to find absolute certainty in a world full of doubt. This idea serves as the foundation of self-awareness and existence in Western philosophy. Descartes' phrase marks a turning point in philosophy by emphasizing the role of human reason and conscious thought as proof of existence, independent of any external reality. Descartes lived during a time of significant intellectual and scientific change, known as the Scientific Revolution. Influenced by skepticism from ancient philosophers like Sextus Empiricus, he wanted to establish firm knowledge that could not be doubted. He was dissatisfied with relying on tradition, authority, and sense perception, which he found unreliable because the senses can be deceived. For example, a stick in water looks bent, but this is merely an illusion caused by light refraction. This led Descartes to engage in a process of radical doubt, questioning everything he believed to be true to see if anything absolutely certain remained. He began by doubting the external world, assuming that everything he experienced could be false or a dream. He even considered the possibility of an evil demon, sometimes called the malicious deceiver, manipulating his thoughts and tricking him into believing in a false reality. In this way, he discarded belief in all external truths, including the existence of the world, his body, and even basic mathematical truths, like 2 + 2 = 4. While doubting everything, Descartes realized that there was one thing he could not doubt: his own act of thinking. Even if an evil demon were deceiving him, he would still have to exist as a thinking being in order to be deceived. In other words, doubting requires a thinker. This realization led to the undeniable truth: cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. This phrase means that the very act of thinking, whether through doubt, belief, or imagination, proves that the self exists. Even if everything else in the universe is uncertain, the existence of one's mind is beyond question. Descartes had found a foundation for knowledge that was indisputable. Descartes' idea redefined the meaning of self-awareness and existence in philosophy. The mind or thinking self is the core of human existence. He believed that while the body is a physical entity subject to decay, the mind is an immaterial and independent substance capable of reasoning, understanding, and introspection. This belief laid the groundwork for dualism, the idea that the mind and body are two distinct substances. For example, even if someone experiences physical pain or loses a sense organ, their ability to think and reflect remains intact. Descartes used this argument to show that the thinking mind defines personal identity and persists even if the body changes or fails. The mind, through reason, could discover truths independently of the physical world, forming the basis of rationalism. This meant that human reason was the primary tool for understanding reality, rather than relying on sensory experience or religious authority. His work inspired a new emphasis on individual consciousness and introspection, which influenced modern philosophical ideas about personal identity, self-awareness, and subjective experience. Philosophers frequently explore whether the world we perceive truly exists or is merely a construct of the mind. His ideas resonate with modern discussions about virtual reality, simulation theory, and artificial intelligence. For instance, in today's world, technologies like virtual reality create artificial environments where people experience sensations indistinguishable from real life. This raises the question, how do we know what is real? Descartes' reasoning that thought confirms existence remains relevant when discussing these technologies. The film The Matrix popularized the idea that humans might be living in a simulated reality created by artificial intelligence. The movie shows Descartes' belief that thinking is the only undeniable proof of existence, regardless of whether the world around us is real or simulated. Philosophers today debate whether machines that simulate human-like thinking can truly be conscious. Descartes would likely argue that self-awareness, the ability to reflect on one's own thoughts, is necessary for genuine existence. Some philosophers argue that Descartes' reasoning is circular, assuming the existence of the I before proving it. How can one assume the I exists before concluding that thinking proves existence? Descartes' belief in mind-body dualism raised difficult questions about how the mind and body interact. How can an immaterial mind control a physical body if the two are completely separate? David Hume questioned whether the self even exists as a permanent entity, suggesting that thoughts occur but do not require a stable, enduring self. Modern neuroscience also questions whether consciousness is more of a biological process than an independent, immaterial mind. His quest for certainty led to the discovery of a universal truth that still resonates in philosophical, psychological, and technological discussions today. The concept of tabula rasa, which means blank slate in Latin, is one of the most important ideas in John Locke's philosophy. He argued that the human mind is like a blank slate at birth, free from any pre-existing knowledge, ideas, or concepts. All knowledge comes from experience and sensory input, meaning that individuals learn and develop based on what they encounter in life. This idea marked a revolutionary departure from earlier philosophical views, such as Plato's theory of innate knowledge, which suggested that humans are born with certain ideas and understanding. Locke's theory influenced not only philosophy, but also education, psychology, and political theory, shaping the modern understanding of human development and learning. He believed that when a person is born, their mind is completely empty, like a blank piece of paper. This blank slate is then written on by experiences and sensory perceptions. He argued that humans are not born with any innate ideas such as concepts of good, evil, or God. Instead, all knowledge is acquired through two main sources: sensation and reflection. Sensation refers to what people experience through their five senses. For example, a baby learning about the world by touching objects or seeing colors is gaining knowledge through sensation. Reflection involves the mind's internal processing of the information gathered through sensation. It includes thinking, reasoning, remembering, and imagining. After sensing the world, the mind reflects on these experiences and builds ideas. Locke explained that simple ideas come directly from sensory input, such as the color blue or the feeling of warmth, while complex ideas are formed when the mind combines simple ideas through reflection. For example, the idea of a beautiful painting comes from combining perceptions of colors, shapes, and emotions. One of Locke's primary goals was to challenge the concept of innate knowledge, a belief held by philosophers like René Descartes and Plato. According to the theory of innatism, people are born with certain built-in ideas, such as a sense of morality or mathematics. Newborn babies have no concepts of good, evil, or even basic math. They must learn these concepts through experience and education. If ideas were truly innate, all humans would share the same beliefs, regardless of cultural or personal differences. Since people from different societies have diverse beliefs and values, knowledge cannot be innate. For example, children growing up in different cultures develop different customs, languages, and moral codes based on the environments they are exposed to. The mind is shaped entirely by external influences. His theory has profoundly influenced education and child development theories, particularly the idea that children learn best through experience and a supportive learning environment. Many modern educational practices are based on the belief that the mind is malleable and can be shaped through positive experiences and learning opportunities. Modern psychologists and neuroscientists argue that genetics also play a critical role in shaping the mind, not just experience. For example, children may inherit certain traits like intelligence, temperament, or talent, suggesting that the mind is not entirely blank at birth. Some argue that humans are born with innate language abilities, challenging Locke's view that all knowledge comes from experience. Children can learn complex grammar even without explicit teaching. The categorical imperative is one of the most important ethical principles developed by Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher. His goal was to establish a universal system of morality based on reason, rather than personal desires, emotions, or religious beliefs. At the heart of the categorical imperative is the idea that moral actions must follow universal principles that apply to everyone, at all times, in all situations. Acting morally means doing the right thing because it is inherently right, not because it benefits you or makes you feel good. His theory is deontological, meaning that the rightness or wrongness of an action depends on the action itself, not its consequences. Kant believed that humans are rational beings capable of making moral decisions based on reason. He distinguished between two types of commands that guide human actions: hypothetical imperatives and categorical imperatives. Hypothetical imperatives are conditional rules based on personal desires or specific goals. They take the form of, if you want X, then do Y. For example, if you want to pass the exam, study hard. Hypothetical imperatives are not universal because they depend on individual goals and preferences. Categorical imperatives are absolute and unconditional moral commands that apply to everyone, regardless of personal desires or circumstances. They tell you what you must do simply because it is the morally right thing to do. An example of a categorical imperative would be, do not lie. This command applies universally, no matter the situation or the person's goals. The key difference is that hypothetical imperatives depend on personal goals, while categorical imperatives are binding for all rational beings, regardless of their individual circumstances. To explain how the categorical imperative works, Kant proposed 3 formulations, each providing a different way to test whether an action is morally right. First, the universal law formula: act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. This means that before taking any action, you must ask yourself, what if everyone did this? If the action could logically be universalized, applied to everyone in the same situation, without leading to contradictions or chaos, then the action is morally acceptable. Consider the act of lying. Suppose you are tempted to lie to get out of trouble. Applying the universal law formula, it is acceptable to lie when it benefits me. Imagine if everyone lied whenever it was convenient. In such a world, trust would disappear because no one could believe what others say. Since lying cannot be universalized without causing social breakdown, lying is morally wrong. By contrast, consider the maxim, always keep your promises. If everyone kept their promises, trust would increase, making society function better. Therefore, truth-telling and promise-keeping pass the universalization test and are morally right. Second, the humanity formula. Act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of another, always at the same time as an end, never merely as a means. This means you should never use people as tools for your own benefit, but instead respect their dignity and humanity. Every person has intrinsic value, and moral actions must respect the worth of others as individuals. Suppose a person borrows money from a friend, promising to pay it back but knowing they won't. In this case, they are using the friend as a means to get money without respecting the friend's right to the truth. According to Kant, this is morally wrong because it violates the humanity formula. By contrast, if the person is honest about their financial difficulties and the friend still chooses to help, both parties are respected as ends and treated with dignity. Third, the kingdom of ends formula. Act as if you were a lawmaking member in a kingdom of ends. Kant envisions a community where everyone acts morally according to universal laws they themselves would create. This encourages individuals to consider the consequences of their actions on the community and to behave as responsible members of a morally guided society. Imagine being part of a society where everyone agrees on rules like help those in need and do not steal. If everyone follows these principles, society functions with fairness, mutual respect, and cooperation. According to Kant, moral actions contribute to such a kingdom of ends. Kant famously argued that lying is always wrong, even in extreme situations. Consider the following thought experiment. A murderer comes to your door asking if your friend is hiding inside. You know your friend is in the house. Should you lie to save your friend's life? According to Kant, lying is morally wrong even in this case. If lying were allowed whenever it seemed convenient or morally justified, then trust and honesty would cease to exist in society. Kant insisted that truth-telling is a moral duty, regardless of the consequences, because moral principles must be absolute and universal. Many philosophers have criticized Kant's rigidity, arguing that such strict rules might cause harm in extreme cases. However, Kant believed that consequences should not dictate morality, as focusing only on outcomes could justify immoral actions. Kant's categorical imperative has had a huge impact on moral philosophy, shaping discussions about human rights, justice, and ethical behavior. His ideas influence the development of modern legal systems, human rights frameworks, and ethical guidelines in professions like medicine, law, and politics. Kant's theory is often criticized for being too rigid and inflexible, especially in complex moral dilemmas like the lying to save a life scenario. Critics argue that ignoring consequences can lead to harmful outcomes, making Kant's approach less practical in real-world situations. Some find Kant's moral reasoning too abstract and difficult to apply in everyday life. It requires careful reasoning that may be challenging for individuals without philosophical training. The concept of will to power is one of the most famous and complex ideas developed by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. This idea represents a central force that drives all human behavior, existence, and even the universe itself. Nietzsche believed that life is not driven by survival or pleasure alone, as some philosophers before him suggested, but by a deeper and more fundamental desire, the will to overcome limitations, achieve self-realization, and exercise power over oneself and the world. The will to power is not about domination over others in a narrow sense, though it is often misunderstood that way. Instead, Nietzsche saw it as a creative force that pushes people to grow, improve, and transform themselves into something greater. In this way, the will to power is about personal growth, inner strength, and overcoming life's challenges, making it a deeply inspiring and motivational concept. Nietzsche described the will to power as a fundamental force that exists in all living beings. It is not a literal will or conscious intention, but rather an instinctive drive toward growth, achievement, and self-overcoming. He argued that every being, from plants and animals to humans and societies, possesses this will. For Nietzsche, life itself is an endless struggle toward becoming stronger and creating meaning in a chaotic, indifferent universe. He rejected the idea that humans are simply driven by self-preservation or seeking happiness, as many thinkers of his time believed. Instead, Nietzsche insisted that people are driven by the desire to expand their abilities, conquer challenges, and realize their potential, even if it causes suffering or struggle. In fact, he believed that life's difficulties and conflicts are necessary for growth because they force individuals to adapt and become stronger. For example, a tree growing in harsh conditions, stretching its roots deeper into the earth to survive, demonstrates this will to power. Similarly, a person striving to overcome personal struggles, such as poverty or illness, shows the same force at work. One of the most inspiring aspects of Nietzsche's will to power is its emphasis on personal growth through struggle. He believed that challenges, hardships, and suffering are essential for becoming stronger, wiser, and more resilient. This is where his famous quote comes from. "What does not kill me makes me stronger." Nietzsche encouraged individuals to embrace difficulties rather than avoid them, seeing them as opportunities for personal transformation. He argued that people should not wait for life to be easy or expect happiness to come passively. Instead, they should actively strive to overcome obstacles, face fears, and achieve greatness through effort and persistence. A related concept in Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of the Übermensch, often translated as overman or superman, which represents the highest form of human potential. The Übermensch is someone who fully embraces the will to power and becomes self-realized through personal growth, creativity, and inner strength. This individual creates their own values and lives authentically, rising above conventional morality and societal expectations. He described the Übermensch as a person who has mastered themselves and transcended limitations through continuous self-improvement and personal excellence. He believed that humans should strive to become their best selves by constantly pushing beyond what they thought possible. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven, or Michelangelo could be considered examples of individuals driven by the will to power. Their relentless pursuit of excellence, originality, and self-expression allowed them to leave lasting legacies that changed the world. Nietzsche's idea of the will to power also involved challenging traditional moral values. He believed that societies often create slave morality, a system of values that encourages people to be submissive, obedient, and self-sacrificing. In contrast, he promoted a master morality, which celebrates individual strength, courage, and achievement. He criticized religious systems, especially Christianity, for promoting ideas like humility, meekness, and turning the other cheek, which he saw as denying the will to power. Instead, Nietzsche advocated for creating one's own values based on strength, self-respect, and personal vision. Unfortunately, Nietzsche's will to power has been widely misunderstood and misinterpreted throughout history. Some have wrongly associated it with domination, tyranny, or oppression, often because of how the term was misused by political ideologies in the 20th century, especially by the Nazi regime. However, Nietzsche himself was against violence and authoritarian rule. His will to power was not about conquering others, but about self-mastery and creative empowerment. Nietzsche's will to power is a deeply motivating and transformative idea that encourages self-realization, personal growth, and overcoming limitations. It teaches that life's challenges are opportunities for growth, and greatness comes from facing obstacles with courage and determination. Far from promoting selfishness or domination, the will to power is about becoming the best version of oneself through continuous self-improvement and mastery of one's mind and actions. Nietzsche's philosophy inspires individuals to create meaning in life, even in the face of adversity, and pursue their highest potential with passion and purpose. Jean-Paul Sartre, a French philosopher, writer, and playwright, is one of the most influential thinkers in existentialism, a philosophical movement that explores the meaning of human existence, freedom, and responsibility. At the heart of Sartre's philosophy is the concept of existential freedom, which means that humans define themselves through their actions. People are not born with a predetermined essence or purpose, but must create their identity through the choices they make and the actions they take throughout life. Sartre's famous phrase, "Existence precedes essence," summarizes this idea. He argued that humans exist first and only later create their essence, identity, or purpose through how they choose to live. This belief in total freedom comes with a serious consequence. Humans must take full responsibility for their actions because no one else can define or shape their lives for them. To understand Sartre's concept of existential freedom, we must start with his famous statement, "Man is condemned to be free." By this, Sartre meant that freedom is unavoidable. Humans are thrown into the world without any predefined purpose, destiny, or moral code given by nature, religion, or society. Unlike objects, such as a knife designed to cut or a chair built for sitting, humans do not have an inherent function from birth. They must invent their purpose through their actions and decisions. For example, a person is not born a teacher, artist, or leader. These roles are chosen and earned through actions such as studying, practicing, or pursuing leadership opportunities. In other words, humans become who they are by making conscious choices about how they live. Sartre's philosophy places great emphasis on the freedom to choose and the responsibility that comes with it. Since humans create meaning through their actions, inaction or refusing to choose is also a form of choice. A choice to remain passive or let others define one's life. One of the clearest examples of existential freedom is career choice. Sartre believed that individuals are fully responsible for the career paths they choose, even in challenging circumstances. A person who chooses to become a teacher, doctor, or artist is defining themselves through that commitment. The job becomes a part of their identity, not because society labeled them, but because they chose it through conscious actions such as studying, applying, and working in that field. Consider someone deciding between a career as an engineer or a musician. Each choice has consequences: financial stability, personal fulfillment, or societal recognition. If the person becomes a musician but later regrets the lack of financial stability, Sartre would argue that they cannot blame society, luck, or destiny. They made the choice knowing the possible consequences and must take responsibility for their decision. They are free, even if this freedom comes with uncertainty and anxiety about the future. Similarly, someone working in a job they dislike but refusing to seek change is also making a choice through inaction. Sartre emphasized that inaction is still action, meaning that passively accepting an unwanted life is still a form of choice and responsibility. With existential freedom comes what Sartre called anguish, or existential anxiety. He believed that realizing the extent of one's freedom can be terrifying because it means there is no external authority, no God, fate, or destiny to guide or excuse one's actions. This freedom creates anxiety because people cannot escape responsibility for their actions. Every choice shapes their identity, and there is no one else to blame if things go wrong. Sartre described this feeling of overwhelming responsibility as being condemned to be free. For example, consider a student deciding on a career path after finishing school. The countless possibilities can feel paralyzing because every decision comes with uncertainty and risk. Choosing one path means rejecting all others, and the student must accept responsibility for whatever future that choice brings. The fear of making the wrong decision can cause deep existential anxiety, but Sartre argued that facing this anxiety is part of living authentically. While humans are free, Sartre warned against bad faith, a psychological state where people lie to themselves to avoid the burden of freedom and responsibility. In bad faith, a person pretends they have no choice or blames external forces for their situation, thus denying their existential freedom. For example, someone might stay in an unfulfilling job while blaming their circumstances, such as, "I have no other options," or "it's too late to change careers." Sartre would argue that they are living in bad faith because they refuse to acknowledge that they are still free to act, even if changing careers is difficult or risky. Similarly, a person in an unhappy relationship might say, "I can't leave because I'm trapped," when in reality they choose to stay because leaving feels overwhelming or uncertain. Sartre believed that authentic living means accepting one's freedom and taking responsibility for one's life, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable. To live authentically, people must embrace their freedom, make conscious decisions, and accept responsibility for the consequences. Life has no inherent meaning given by nature or God, but humans can create meaning through their actions, relationships, and projects. An artist who spends years creating works that inspire others is defining themselves as an artist, not because society labeled them that way, but because their actions make it true. This belief inspired Sartre's famous statement, "Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself." Albert Camus developed the concept of absurdism. Absurdism explores the conflict between humans' deep desire to find meaning and purpose in life and the apparent meaninglessness of the universe. He believed that life is inherently chaotic, random, and unpredictable, making the search for ultimate meaning both impossible and inevitable. Despite this apparent lack of meaning, Camus did not suggest despair or nihilism. Instead, he argued that humans must accept the absurd condition of life and live fully in spite of it. His philosophy is about embracing life's struggles without giving in to hopelessness, finding meaning through one's actions, experiences, and perseverance, even when the universe offers no guarantees of success or purpose. At the heart of Camus' absurdism is the absurd condition, which arises from the tension between two conflicting forces: human desire for meaning and meaningless of universe. Humans have a natural need to understand life's purpose, find meaning, and feel that their lives have significance. We seek reasons behind our existence and long for clarity in a confusing world. The universe, however, appears indifferent and lacks inherent meaning or purpose. Life is full of suffering, randomness, and unpredictable events. Natural disasters, disease, and death occur without reason, leaving humanity searching for answers that may never come. Camus believed this conflict creates the absurd, an uncomfortable realization that no ultimate purpose exists in the universe, yet humans cannot stop searching for meaning. This state of existential contradiction is inevitable and unresolvable. Humans face three possible responses when confronted with the absurd condition: suicide or religious belief or false hope or maybe revolt. Well, suicide. Camus considered this option but ultimately rejected it. He argued that taking one's life is a way of escaping the absurd by surrendering to it, refusing to face life's struggles. He saw suicide as philosophical surrender, a way of avoiding the responsibility of living. And what about religious belief or false hope? Another option is turning to religion or other ideologies that promise meaning, purpose, or an afterlife. Camus rejected this approach as well, seeing it as a kind of philosophical suicide. Accepting religious explanations without evidence is a way of avoiding reality rather than confronting life as it truly is. The third and only acceptable response for Camus is revolt, not in a political sense, but in a spiritual and existential sense. To revolt means to accept life's absurdity while continuing to live fully, engage passionately, and create personal meaning through experiences, relationships, and creative pursuits. Camus encouraged people to live with defiance, even though the universe offers no guarantees. Camus illustrated absurdism through the ancient Greek myth of Sisyphus, which he explored in his famous essay, The Myth of Sisyphus. In the myth, Sisyphus, a cunning king, is punished by the gods for his deceitful behavior. His punishment is to roll a heavy boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down every time he reaches the top. This eternal, pointless struggle becomes a symbol of futility and hopeless repetition. However, Camus reinterprets the myth in a deeply philosophical way. He imagines Sisyphus as the ultimate example of the human condition, trapped in a meaningless, repetitive task, much like how humans face life's endless struggles without any final reward. Yet, in this struggle, Sisyphus is still free to confront his fate with awareness and acceptance. Camus imagines Sisyphus finding contentment in his struggle, not because the task has meaning, but because he chooses how to approach it. Camus famously concludes the essay with the line, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy. By embracing the struggle itself, Sisyphus defies his fate." Similarly, humans can find personal meaning by facing life's absurdity with courage and determination, even when success is uncertain or impossible. Camus' concept of absurdism is not limited to philosophical debates. it is deeply relevant to everyday life. Many human experiences reflect the absurd struggle. People often work long hours, striving for success, wealth, or recognition, only to face setbacks, layoffs, or retirement. Even when goals are achieved, new challenges arise. The effort seems endless, much like Sisyphus's task. A person who works tirelessly for a promotion might achieve it, only to face even greater responsibilities and stress, starting the cycle again. Relationships are another example of the absurd struggle. People seek love, understanding, and connection, yet face miscommunication, heartbreak, and loss. Despite these challenges, humans continue searching for meaningful relationships. Many people strive to leave a lasting legacy through their careers, art, or family, knowing that time will eventually erase all memories. Yet the pursuit of greatness continues, driven by the human need to create meaning. The ultimate absurd reality is death itself. Everyone is destined to die, and yet humans live as if they can resist or delay death through health routines, success, or legacy building. Camus did not suggest giving up in the face of life's absurdity. On the contrary, he believed that humans should embrace life fully while acknowledging its lack of inherent meaning. This involves living with honesty, freedom, and creative engagement. Humans can create meaning through their actions, passions, and relationships, even if that meaning is temporary. Camus saw art and literature as ways to express the human struggle and transform it into something meaningful. Rather than retreating into despair or false beliefs, people should engage actively with life, embracing both its beauty and suffering. Absurdism challenges humans to accept life's chaos and uncertainty while living with passion, freedom, and purpose. His reimagining of Sisyphus teaches that even when life seems repetitive or meaningless, how we respond defines our existence. In the face of a universe that offers no inherent purpose, Camus encourages us to create meaning through our actions, live with awareness, and rebel against despair. His philosophy remains a powerful call to live authentically in an unpredictable world. Thomas Hobbes developed the idea of the social contract. His theory emerged during a time of political chaos, including the English Civil War, which influenced his views on human nature, government, and society. Hobbes' social contract explains how individuals come together to form a government by surrendering some personal freedoms in exchange for protection, security, and order provided by the state. This theory laid the foundation for modern political philosophy, shaping the development of constitutional law, democratic governance, and legal systems worldwide. His ideas continue to influence discussions about citizenship, rights, and government responsibility. He imagined a world without government or laws, a hypothetical situation he called the state of nature. Life in this state would be chaotic, dangerous, and brutal, as humans are naturally driven by self-interest, desires, and the need for survival. In this state, people would constantly compete for resources, power, and safety, leading to endless conflict. He described life in the state of nature as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Without rules or authority, there would be no way to resolve disputes peacefully, making life a constant struggle. Everyone would live in fear of violence, as there would be no law to protect individuals from harm. Trust would be nearly impossible, as people would always be suspicious of others' intentions. To escape this dangerous existence, individuals must agree to form a social contract, an implicit agreement where people surrender certain freedoms in exchange for security and order. By giving up their absolute freedom to act however they please, people gain protection from violence and theft, creating a safer and more stable society. The key elements of Hobbes' social contract are mutual agreement, sovereign authority, giving up certain rights, and enforcement of laws. One agrees with one another to form a government that will enforce laws and ensure security. This agreement is voluntary, though driven by necessity to avoid chaos. The government must be a strong central authority, a sovereign, with the power to create and enforce laws. This sovereign could be a monarch or ruling body with absolute authority. Hobbes believed that a powerful ruler was necessary to keep order and prevent society from falling back into the state of nature. People must give up some personal freedoms, such as the right to harm others or take what they want, in exchange for legal protections. However, they should never surrender the right to self-defense, as survival is a fundamental human instinct. The government must enforce laws fairly and punish offenders to maintain peace and ensure that individuals follow the rules of the social contract. The idea of the social contract forms the basis of modern constitutions and legal systems around the world. A constitution is essentially a formal social contract between a government and its citizens. It outlines the rights and responsibilities of both parties, ensuring that individuals follow the law while the government provides protection, justice, and public services. The U.S. Constitution is an example of a legal social contract. It established a system of government based on the rule of law, ensuring that individuals' freedoms are protected while granting the government authority to enforce laws and provide national defense. The Bill of Rights guarantees essential freedoms such as freedom of speech, religion, and due process, balancing individual rights with government power. In modern democratic societies, citizens participate in the social contract by voting, paying taxes, and obeying the law. In return, they expect the government to provide security, education, healthcare, and justice. If the government fails to uphold its responsibilities, citizens can protest, vote for new leaders, or demand constitutional reforms. Hobbes recognized that giving up personal freedoms might seem undesirable, but argued that the alternative, living without government, would be far worse. In the state of nature, there are no laws and no protections, leaving individuals vulnerable to violence and injustice. While living under a government might limit certain freedoms, such as the freedom to steal or act violently, it ensures peace and stability, allowing people to thrive collectively. For example, modern citizens pay taxes, follow traffic laws, and submit to police authority as part of the social contract. In return, they expect public services, safe roads, and protection from crime. The freedom from fear and protection from harm outweigh the personal freedoms they surrender. While many philosophers expanded on the social contract theory, Hobbes favored an absolute monarchy as the best form of government. He believed that only a powerful ruler with absolute authority could maintain order and prevent society from collapsing into chaos. This view reflects Hobbes's belief that humans are naturally selfish, competitive, and prone to conflict, requiring a strong government to keep them in check. However, modern democracies have limited government power through checks and balances and constitutional rights, addressing concerns about potential tyranny or abuse of power that Hobbes' absolute government model might cause. While Hobbes's theory has been highly influential, it has faced several criticisms over the years. Critics argue that Hobbes's view of humans as naturally selfish and violent is overly pessimistic. Some believed that humans are capable of cooperation and moral reasoning, even without a strong ruler. Hobbes' preference for absolute monarchy is often criticized as being anti-democratic and prone to tyranny. In contrast, modern political systems favor limited government with checks on power. Hobbes focused on security and order rather than individual freedoms. Later, thinkers expanded the social contract theory to protect individual rights alongside ensuring societal stability. Karl Marx is best known for developing the theory of class struggle, which forms the core of his political and economic philosophy known as Marxism. Marx argued that history is driven by economic conflict between different social classes, particularly between the ruling class and the working class. According to Marx, this constant struggle for economic power and control of resources has shaped the historical development of societies throughout time. The theory of class struggle remains relevant in understanding economic inequality, labor rights movements, and social revolutions worldwide. It explains how economic systems create social divisions and why conflicts arise between those who own wealth and those who work to create it. Marx defined class struggle as the ongoing conflict between social classes with opposing economic interests. He believed that society is divided into two primary classes based on their relationship to the means of production. One of these is the bourgeoisie, which means capitalist class. This class owns the means of production, such as factories, businesses, and land. They generate profit by employing workers, but keep the majority of wealth for themselves. Their primary interest is maximizing profits while reducing labor costs, often leading to exploitation of workers. Another, the proletariat, meaning working class. This class consists of workers who do not own property and must sell their labor to survive. They work in factories, farms, and businesses, but receive only wages that are often far less than the value of what they produce. Their main interest is securing better wages, working conditions, and fair treatment. Marx believed that these economic interests are inherently opposed because the bourgeoisie seeks to reduce wages and increase profits, while the proletariat seeks higher wages and better living conditions. This conflict creates a power struggle that drives social change and historical development. Marx saw history as a series of class struggles that shape societies over time. He believed that every major historical event could be explained through economic conflict between ruling and working classes. He outlined this historical progression in what he called historical materialism, arguing that societies develop in stages based on changing economic systems. Early human societies were communal and lacked social classes. People shared resources and worked together for survival. As agriculture and private property emerged, societies developed into slave-based economies with rulers, masters, exploiting enslaved workers. In the Middle Ages, society was divided into lords, landowners, and serfs, peasants, who worked the land. The nobility controlled land, while peasants were tied to the land and forced to give a portion of their crops to the ruling class. The Industrial Revolution created the modern capitalist system, where the bourgeoisie owned factories and businesses while the proletariat worked for wages. Marx believed that capitalism was inherently exploitative because workers produced goods worth far more than what they were paid, generating enormous profits for the owners. Marx predicted that growing economic inequality under capitalism would cause the working class to rise up and overthrow the capitalist system through a revolution. He envisioned a future where society would become classless, with collective ownership of the means of production, eliminating exploitation. Marx believed that capitalism exploits workers because they are paid less than the value of what they produce. Marx argued that workers become alienated from their labor under capitalism because they have no control over what they produce or how it is produced. They are reduced to cogs in a machine, performing repetitive tasks with little personal satisfaction. He believed that the working class must develop class consciousness, meaning an awareness of their exploitation and common struggle. He argued that once workers realized their shared oppression, they would organize, unite, and demand change. Marx predicted that the conflict between the ruling and working classes would eventually lead to revolution. He believed the proletariat would overthrow the bourgeoisie through collective action, establishing a socialist state where resources are shared equally. The history of labor rights movements and economic reforms provides clear examples of class struggle in action. Throughout modern history, workers' protests, strikes, and union movements have fought against capitalist exploitation, demanding fair wages, safe working conditions, and legal protections. During the Industrial Revolution, factories in Britain, the US, and Europe employed millions of workers in dangerous conditions, often paying them starvation wages while business owners amassed great wealth. Workers responded by forming labor unions and organizing strikes, leading to important reforms like the 8-hour workday, minimum wage laws, and child labor bans. The Great Depression exposed severe inequalities in capitalist economies. Workers' struggles continue today through campaigns for fair wages, union rights, and economic justice. Movements like the fight for $15, minimum wage increase, and global protests against corporate greed reflect Marx's theory that economic struggles between owners and workers remain unresolved. While Marx's theory of class struggle has shaped political thought, it has faced significant criticism. Critics argue that Marx's view of society as divided into two rigid classes, bourgeoisie and proletariat, is too simplistic. Modern economies have multiple social classes, including a middle class, which complicates the notion of class conflict. Marx's revolutionary ideas inspired communist revolutions in countries like the Soviet Union and China, but these regimes often resulted in authoritarian rule, economic failures, and human rights abuses, far from Marx's vision of a classless society. Many capitalist societies have adapted by introducing labor laws, minimum wages, and welfare systems, reducing the likelihood of violent class revolutions. Karl Marx's theory of class struggle offers a compelling explanation for the economic conflicts that have shaped human history. His belief that economic inequality leads to social unrest and drives historical development continues to resonate in modern debates about workers' rights, social justice, and economic reform. While his predictions about worldwide revolutions have not materialized as expected, his ideas remain central to discussions about inequality, capitalism, and the quest for a more just society. John Stuart Mill is best known for refining and expanding the ethical theory of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a moral philosophy centered on the greatest happiness principle, which states that actions are morally right if they promote the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. Mill expanded this idea by emphasizing quality of happiness in addition to its quantity, offering a more nuanced and compassionate view of morality. Utilitarianism is a consequentialist theory, meaning that the morality of an action is determined solely by its outcome or result, rather than by motives or inherent moral rules. In simple terms, an action is right if it leads to happiness and wrong if it causes unhappiness. Mill defined happiness as pleasure and the absence of pain. However, he recognized that life is not just about physical pleasure, but also about intellectual, emotional, and moral fulfillment. Therefore, the goal of moral action is to maximize overall happiness for individuals and society as a whole. The greatest happiness principle is the central idea of Mill's utilitarianism. It states, actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness, wrong as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. This principle requires evaluating actions based on how much pleasure or pain they produce, not just for the person performing the action, but for everyone affected. For example, a policy that improves the lives of millions, even if it causes discomfort to a few, would be morally right because it creates a net increase in happiness. One of Mill's most important contributions was his distinction between higher and lower pleasures. He disagreed with the idea that all pleasures are equal. Bentham viewed pleasure quantitatively. More pleasure meant greater happiness, regardless of the type of pleasure. Mill, however, argued that some pleasures are superior to others based on their quality. Lower pleasures are physical or sensory pleasures, such as eating, drinking, or resting. While important, these pleasures are short-term and temporary. Higher pleasures include intellectual, emotional, and moral satisfactions, such as reading a book, enjoying art, engaging in meaningful relationships, or contributing to society. Higher pleasures involve reason, imagination, and creativity, offering lasting fulfillment and personal growth. Mill famously stated, "It is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied." This means that intellectual or moral growth, even if challenging or painful, is more valuable than simply pursuing physical comfort or pleasure. Mill's utilitarianism requires people to consider the total consequences of their actions, balancing benefits against harms to maximize overall well-being. The process involves, first, identifying the action, second, evaluating consequences, third, comparing net happiness, and finally, choosing the right action. For example, consider a government deciding whether to build a new public park. The park would provide recreational space and natural beauty, benefiting thousands of people. However, it might require tax increases or relocation of businesses. Utilitarian reasoning would compare the total benefits, public enjoyment, health improvements, with the costs, economic disruptions, to determine whether building the park creates greater happiness overall. One criticism Mill addressed is that utilitarianism could, in theory, sacrifice individual rights if doing so increases the happiness of the majority. For instance, punishing an innocent person to prevent public panic might maximize overall happiness, but clearly violates justice and fairness. Mill argued that justice and individual rights are essential for long-term happiness. He believed that protecting personal freedoms, such as freedom of speech and freedom of thought, creates a more just and prosperous society, ultimately producing greater happiness in the long run. While utilitarianism has influenced modern ethics and policy making, it has faced several criticisms. How do you measure happiness or well-being? People experience pleasure and pain differently, making calculations highly subjective. Critics argue that utilitarianism could justify unjust actions, such as sacrificing one person to benefit the majority, raising concerns about human rights abuses. Since utilitarianism only considers outcomes, critics claim it ignores moral intentions or personal character. An action with good intentions but a bad outcome would still be considered wrong under utilitarianism. The theory might allow the majority to impose its will on the minority, justifying discrimination or oppression if it benefits the larger group. Utilitarianism remains one of the most influential ethical theories in philosophy, politics, and law. His emphasis on the greatest happiness principle, higher pleasures, and individual rights continues to shape modern society. While it faces criticism for its reliance on outcomes and happiness measurement, Mill's utilitarianism encourages ethical reasoning based on promoting well-being and reducing harm. It provides a practical framework for policymaking, social reform, and personal decision-making, ensuring that actions are guided by the pursuit of greater good for the greatest number. Karl Popper revolutionized the philosophy of science with his concept of falsifiability. For a theory to be considered scientific, it must be falsifiable, meaning that it should be testable and capable of being proven false through empirical observation or experimentation. If a theory cannot be tested or disproven, it belongs to the realm of beliefs or metaphysics, not science. Falsifiability principle helped distinguish science from pseudoscience and has become a central standard in evaluating scientific theories in fields such as physics, biology, and psychology. His approach reshaped how researchers conduct experiments and how scientific knowledge progresses over time. In simple terms, falsifiability means that a scientific theory must make predictions that can be tested through observation or experiments. If the predictions fail, the theory is rejected or modified. This constant possibility of being wrong is what makes science self-correcting and progressive. Consider the theory, all swans are white. This statement can be tested by observing swans. If even one black swan is found, the theory is proven false. Thus, the statement is falsifiable because it can be contradicted by real-world evidence. In contrast, a claim like, "There are invisible spirits watching us," is not falsifiable because it cannot be tested or observed through scientific methods. No experiment could prove or disprove this claim, making it unscientific. According to Popper, a theory is scientific only if it is testable. This means the theory must be clear enough to generate specific predictions that can be examined through experiments. If the predictions turn out to be wrong, the theory must be rejected or revised. Popper opposed the traditional view that science advances through the accumulation of confirming evidence. Instead, he argued that scientists should actively try to disprove their theories, not just seek evidence that supports them. This process, called risky prediction, ensures that only theories capable of failing are taken seriously. Popper emphasized that certainty is impossible in science. Even widely accepted scientific theories must be open to being rejected if new evidence contradicts them. For example, in the 17th century, Isaac Newton's laws of motion were considered absolute truths. However, in the 20th century, Albert Einstein's theory of relativity demonstrated that Newton's laws do not apply in extreme conditions, such as near the speed of light. This showed that Newton's theories were falsifiable, allowing science to progress through correction. Similarly, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution makes specific, testable predictions about fossil records, genetics, and species development. If future discoveries ever contradict these predictions, the theory would need to be revised or replaced. Also, Einstein's theory of general relativity predicted how light bends around massive objects due to gravity. This prediction was tested during a solar eclipse in 1919 and was confirmed. However, if the results had been different, Einstein's theory would have been falsified. Scientific experiments begin with a hypothesis, a clear, testable statement about what a researcher expects to happen. A good hypothesis must be falsifiable, meaning that experiments can show it to be false if the evidence contradicts it. Suppose a scientist tests the hypothesis, a new drug cures migraines. If the drug works, patients who take it should experience fewer migraines than those who receive a placebo. If the drug does not reduce migraines, the hypothesis is falsified, and the scientist must revise or discard the theory. The ability to test and disprove the hypothesis ensures that scientific knowledge remains reliable and evidence-based. Popper developed his falsifiability principle in response to theories he considered pseudoscientific, meaning they cannot be tested or disproven. He criticized theories like psychoanalysis, Freud's theories, Marxist theory of history, astrology. Popper argued that Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories, such as the unconscious mind influencing behavior, are not falsifiable because they can explain any outcome. For example, if someone is aggressive, Freud might say it's due to repressed trauma, but if they're calm, he could also claim repression. This flexibility makes the theory impossible to disprove, which Popper saw as unscientific. Karl Marx's theory of historical development predicted that capitalist societies would inevitably collapse into socialism. However, when this didn't happen as expected, Marxist thinkers revised the theory to fit new historical events, making the theory adaptable to any outcome and thus unfalsifiable. Popper labeled astrology as pseudoscience because its predictions are vague and can be interpreted to fit any result. For instance, a horoscope predicting you will face challenges this week cannot be tested or disproven, making astrology unscientific. Despite its impact, Popper's falsifiability principle has faced several criticisms. Critics argue that some complex scientific theories, such as string theory and physics, are difficult to falsify because current technology cannot fully test their predictions. In real-life scientific research, scientists often modify theories to fit new data rather than abandoning them after a single failure. This flexible process contrasts with Popper's idea of immediate rejection. Some scientific theories, such as the theory of evolution, explain past events and do not always make clear future predictions, raising questions about how falsifiability applies. Popper's principle reshaped how science defines valid theories by requiring them to be testable, observable, and disprovable. He showed that true scientific progress depends on the ability to correct mistakes through continuous testing, questioning, and revision. While his principle has faced criticism, it remains a defining feature of scientific research and has become one of the most influential ideas in the philosophy of science. Popper's legacy reminds us that knowledge grows through doubt, inquiry, and falsification, driving humanity's search for truth. Martin Heidegger, a German philosopher, is considered one of the most influential thinkers in 20th century philosophy. He explores the nature of human existence, being, through the lens of time. Heidegger's central question is, what does it mean to be? A fundamental issue often overlooked by traditional philosophy. He sought to understand existence, being, in a deeply personal and existential way, arguing that humans experience life through time, specifically through their awareness of past, present, and future. Through this exploration, Heidegger reshaped existentialism, phenomenology, and metaphysics, influencing later philosophers such as Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Hannah Arendt. His work provides a profound and practical framework for reflecting on life's meaning, purpose, and mortality, especially during major life events like personal crises, loss, or facing one's own death. Heidegger believed that philosophy had become too concerned with abstract ideas and objective knowledge, failing to address the experience of living. Heidegger aimed to reconnect philosophy with everyday life by asking what it truly means to exist. To study being, Heidegger used the term Dasein, which means being there. He chose this term to emphasize that humans are not detached observers of the world, but are always engaged and situated in specific contexts. Dasein refers to human existence characterized by self-awareness, choices, and relationships with the world and others. Time is the key to understanding being because human life unfolds within the context of time. Humans are unique because they have a temporal awareness, a deep understanding of the past, present, and future. Heidegger argued that humans carry their past experiences, memories, and life history wherever they go. Past events shape who they are today and influence how they interpret the world. It's like someone reflecting on a difficult childhood may understand their current personality, relationships, or life choices through the lens of those past experiences. Life is lived in the present through everyday tasks and interactions. Humans are constantly being in the world, meaning they are engaged in life's practical tasks, such as working, caring for loved ones, and pursuing goals. Consider how a parent actively cares for their child, balancing daily tasks like cooking, teaching, and comforting. This engagement defines their present existence. Human life is defined by its future possibilities. People are always looking ahead, imagining and planning for what could be. This forward-looking nature creates anxiety, but also gives life meaning. A student preparing for exams is constantly thinking about future possibilities, success, failure, graduation, or career prospects, shaping their present actions. One of Heidegger's most profound ideas is being toward death, which refers to humans' awareness of their own mortality. He argued that understanding life's finitude, the reality that death is inevitable, is crucial to living authentically. Unlike animals, humans are aware of their eventual death, which gives their existence a sense of urgency and meaning. Heidegger believed that facing mortality can inspire individuals to live more purposefully, rather than drifting through life in a state of everyday distraction. He criticized those who live in inauthentic existence, avoiding thoughts of death by focusing only on routine, social expectations, or material success. Instead, embracing being toward death means recognizing life's fragility and temporality, making choices based on personal values rather than societal pressures, authentically engaging with life, relationships, and goals, while accepting life's uncertainties. For example, after experiencing a major health scare, a person might reevaluate their life, change careers, or mend broken relationships. Facing mortality often leads to self-reflection and personal growth. The death of a loved one forces individuals to reflect on their relationships, life choices, and the meaning of life itself. After losing a parent, someone might reconsider how they spend time with their own children, realizing the importance of family and shared experiences. Major career shifts often provoke questions about life goals and personal fulfillment. A person who feels burned out might quit their job and pursue a more meaningful career, driven by a desire to live authentically. Events like retirement, moving to a new country, or ending a long-term relationship can trigger existential reflection. Retiring after decades of work may force someone to ask, what gives my life meaning now that my career is over? This can lead to new pursuits like volunteering, hobbies, or community engagement. During global crises such as wars or pandemics, people may experience collective anxiety and question the meaning of life and society. Many people reflected on their lives during the COVID-19 pandemic, reconsidering what matters most: relationships, health, or life purpose. For Heidegger, the goal of understanding being and time is to live authentically, accepting life's uncertainties, making meaningful choices, and staying aware of one's place in the world. He encouraged people to take ownership of their existence by pursuing what truly matters to them, rather than conforming to social expectations or living on autopilot. Living authentically means recognizing mortality as a natural part of life, engaging fully with relationships, work, and passions, and creating meaning through personal commitment and purposeful action. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientific minds in history, revolutionized our understanding of the universe with his theory of relativity. He introduced two groundbreaking concepts: special relativity and general relativity, fundamentally changing how we perceive time, space, motion, and gravity. Einstein's theory challenged the long-held belief that time and space are absolute, meaning they are the same for everyone, everywhere. Instead, he demonstrated that time and space are relative, meaning they change depending on factors like speed and gravity. His theory has reshaped modern physics, influencing everything from cosmology and astronomy to GPS technology and space travel. Understanding relativity helps explain phenomena like time dilation, space-time curvature, and even black holes, concepts that sound like science fiction but are rooted in proven science. Before Einstein, most scientists believed in the ideas proposed by Isaac Newton, who described time and space as absolute and fixed. According to Newton, time flows at the same rate for everyone regardless of where they are or how fast they are moving, and space exists as an unchanging, infinite stage where events take place. This view seemed logical and worked well for most everyday experiences. For example, if two people looked at a clock, they would agree on the exact same time, and distances between objects were considered fixed. Newtonian physics dominated science for centuries, until Einstein's theory revealed a much more complex reality. In 1905, Einstein published his theory of special relativity, which deals with objects moving at constant speeds, particularly close to the speed of light, which equals 2,99792,458 meters per second. He proposed two key principles. The laws of physics are the same for everyone, and the speed of light is constant. Light travels at the same speed in a vacuum, no matter how fast the observer or light source is moving. These two principles led to the revolutionary conclusion that time and space are not separate entities but are part of a single framework called space-time. Events that occur in the universe are influenced by both where they happen and when they happen. This interconnected relationship between space and time fundamentally changed science. One of the most famous consequences of special relativity is time dilation, which means that time slows down for objects moving at very high speeds. In other words, the faster you move, the slower time passes for you compared to someone standing still. Imagine two astronauts. Astronaut A stays on Earth, while astronaut B travels to a distant star at nearly the speed of light. Due to time dilation, astronaut B's clock on the spaceship would tick more slowly than astronaut A's clock on Earth. If astronaut B returns to Earth after several years of space travel, they would have aged much less than astronaut A. This phenomenon has been experimentally confirmed using highly accurate atomic clocks placed on fast-moving jets and satellites. The clocks in motion recorded slightly less time passed than the clocks on the ground. Another surprising effect of special relativity is length contraction, meaning that objects moving close to the speed of light appear shorter along the direction of motion. Imagine a spaceship traveling at nearly the speed of light. To an observer on Earth, the spaceship would appear compressed or shortened, even though the astronauts on board would experience the ship's full size normally. One of the most famous equations in history comes from special relativity, E equals mc squared. This equation means that energy and mass are interchangeable, connected by the speed of light squared. Even a small amount of mass can be converted into an enormous amount of energy, which is the principle behind nuclear energy and atomic bombs. In nuclear reactors, atoms are split, and a tiny amount of mass is converted into massive amounts of energy, powering cities. While special relativity focuses on objects moving at constant speeds, general relativity deals with gravity and acceleration. Einstein proposed that gravity is not a force in the traditional sense, but the result of curved space-time caused by massive objects like planets, stars, and black holes. Massive objects warp space and time. Much like placing a heavy ball on a rubber sheet creates a depression. Smaller objects, like satellites, follow the curves created by these massive bodies. The Earth orbits the Sun because the Sun's mass warps spacetime, creating a path that Earth follows. This curved spacetime explains how gravity works without requiring direct physical contact. One of the best real-world examples of Einstein's relativity at work is GPS technology, which you probably use every day on your smartphone or car navigation system. GPS relies on satellites orbiting Earth that send time-stamped signals to receivers on the ground. John Rawls is best known for his new way of thinking about justice, fairness, and equality. His ideas have become central to political philosophy, especially in discussions about social justice, human rights, and economic fairness. Rawls believed that a just society should be based on equal opportunities, individual freedoms, and fair distribution of resources, ensuring that the least advantaged members of society are protected. His central idea is the justice as fairness framework, built on two key principles: the liberty principle and the difference principle. He introduced an imaginative thought experiment called the original position and the veil of ignorance, which helps decide fair principles of justice without personal bias. Rawls's theory has influenced real-world debates on economic policies, welfare systems, human rights legislation, and social reforms aimed at reducing inequality. Justice should be understood as fairness, meaning that social and economic inequalities are acceptable only if they benefit everyone, particularly the least advantaged. His vision goes beyond equality of rights by emphasizing equal opportunities and fair outcomes, recognizing that people are born with different talents and into different social conditions. He believed that a just society must create equal conditions where people can succeed regardless of their background, while still allowing some level of inequality if it motivates people to work hard and be innovative. His theory aimed to balance freedom and equality, ensuring that neither is sacrificed in the pursuit of the other. To explain how a fair society should be organized, Rawls proposed the original position, a hypothetical scenario where rational individuals come together to create a system of justice for society. In this thought experiment, participants are placed behind the veil of ignorance, meaning they have no knowledge of their own social status, class, gender, race, abilities, or wealth. Why the veil of ignorance? The purpose of the veil of ignorance is to remove personal biases and self-interest, forcing participants to choose principles that benefit everyone fairly, not just themselves. Since they could end up being poor, disabled, or marginalized once the veil is lifted, they would naturally select rules that protect the most vulnerable members of society. Imagine designing a country's legal system without knowing whether you would be born into a wealthy family, a low-income community, or have a disability. To ensure fairness, you would likely advocate for equal legal rights, access to education, healthcare, and job opportunities, since you wouldn't want to suffer from discrimination or poverty if you ended up being less fortunate. Rawls outlined two main principles of justice that would emerge from the original position: the liberty principle and the difference principle. Everyone should have equal rights to the most extensive set of fundamental liberties compatible with the same rights for others. These liberties include freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and political participation, right to vote, right to own property, and freedom from discrimination. In a democratic society, everyone should have the right to vote and express opinions equally, regardless of their wealth or social background. Social and economic inequalities are allowed only if they benefit the least advantaged members of society. Positions of power and wealth should be accessible to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity. A country could allow higher salaries for doctors, engineers, or entrepreneurs because their work contributes to society's overall well-being. However, policies like progressive taxation and social welfare programs should ensure that low-income families receive support, reducing extreme inequality and improving overall fairness. All individuals should have the same chances to succeed, regardless of their background. This principle goes beyond formal equality, which only ensures equal legal rights, by demanding real-life fairness. For example, children from poor families should have the same access to quality education, healthcare, and job prospects as children from wealthier backgrounds. This requires governments to invest in public services, redistribute resources, and remove barriers like racial discrimination and economic inequality. Rawls' theory has been applied in various social policies aimed at reducing economic inequality and promoting fairness. Here are real-world examples inspired by his principles. Tax systems, where the wealthy pay a higher tax rate to support social programs for the less privileged, align with the difference principle. This ensures that economic inequalities are managed to benefit society as a whole, not just the wealthy elite. Social welfare systems, such as food assistance, unemployment benefits, and universal health care, reflect the idea that the least advantaged must be protected and supported. These programs reduce the negative effects of poverty while preserving individual freedoms. Ensuring that all children receive free, quality education, regardless of their parents' income, promotes equal opportunities. Those in Canada or Scandinavia ensure that no one is denied medical care due to inability to pay, supporting Rawls' vision of fair equality of opportunity. Legal protections against racial, gender, and age discrimination reflect the liberty principle by ensuring that basic freedoms apply equally to all, regardless of social identity. While Rawls's theory of justice has been widely praised, it has faced several criticisms. Critics argue that Rawls's theory assumes people are rational and morally driven, which may not be realistic in actual political systems driven by self-interest. Some argue that Rawls' emphasis on redistributing wealth and resources might disincentivize hard work or innovation, potentially limiting economic growth. Balancing individual freedom and economic equality can be challenging, as greater economic redistribution might limit property rights or free market competition. Rawls's theory assumes a universal standard of justice, but critics argue that different cultures and traditions may have different views on what constitutes fairness. Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, historian, and social theorist, explored how power and knowledge are deeply interconnected. He argued that knowledge is never neutral. Instead, knowledge is created, controlled, and distributed in ways that reinforce power structures in society. According to Foucault, those who control knowledge also control how people think, behave, and view reality. His theory reshaped how we understand institutions, such as schools, hospitals, prisons, and even the media, which shape knowledge to exercise power over individuals. Foucault's concept is relevant today in understanding political propaganda, media influence, surveillance, and even scientific research, showing how knowledge is used to define what is considered truth or normal in society. Foucault redefined power beyond the traditional sense of force, military strength, or political authority. He saw power as diffused throughout society, present in everyday relationships and institutions. In his view, power isn't something that only rulers or governments possess. It is everywhere, embedded in social norms, practices, and ways of thinking. Knowledge is not simply about discovering facts or truths. It is about constructing truths that support certain power structures. In this context, knowledge produces power because it shapes how people understand the world and accept authority. Power also produces knowledge because those in power control what is taught, what is studied, and what is considered true. Knowledge is socially created through institutions such as schools, governments, and media outlets. It reflects the values and interests of those in positions of power. Foucault introduced the concept of discourse, meaning the set of ideas, language, and practices used to define reality. Discourses create norms about what is acceptable, shaping public opinion and societal behavior. The discourse around mental illness has changed over time. In the past, people with mental disorders were labeled as insane and locked away. Today, mental health is seen as a legitimate medical issue deserving treatment, reflecting a shift in power and knowledge in psychiatry and psychology. Unlike traditional views of power as being held by kings or politicians, Foucault argued that power operates through institutions, rules, and social norms. Teachers, doctors, scientists, journalists, and bureaucrats all exercise power by defining what is true or correct. Society enforces normal behavior by defining rules and expectations through institutions like schools, hospitals, and prisons. People internalize these norms, disciplining themselves without needing direct punishment. Schools enforce punctuality, obedience, and hard work through a hidden curriculum, training students to become disciplined members of society. In his work, Discipline and Punish, Foucault explored how modern institutions use surveillance as a form of power. He used the metaphor of the panopticon, a circular prison where prisoners are watched but never know when they are being observed. Today, surveillance cameras, online tracking, and social media algorithms monitor people's behavior, influencing how they act, even when they are unaware of being watched. One of the clearest examples of Foucault's concept of power and knowledge is how the media shapes public opinion by controlling information and narratives. Media outlets serve as powerful producers of knowledge, deciding what stories are told, how they are framed, and which voices are heard, thereby influencing how people understand current events. Media organizations have the power to decide what topics are important by giving them more coverage. For example, during election seasons, news networks choose which candidates receive the most airtime, shaping public perceptions of who is electable or credible. How a news story is framed can influence how the public interprets it. A protest might be framed as either a fight for justice or a riot, depending on the media outlet's perspective. This framing changes how the public perceives the event, influencing political debates and policy decisions. Media platforms have become gatekeepers of information, determining which perspectives are considered legitimate and which are dismissed as conspiracy theories or fake news. During the COVID-19 pandemic, global media outlets played a crucial role in spreading public health information. However, some governments also censored information or controlled narratives, showing how knowledge can be manipulated for political purposes. Today, social media platforms use algorithms that amplify certain voices while suppressing others, shaping what millions of people see and believe. Content that receives more engagement is promoted, giving influencers, corporations, and political campaigns unprecedented power to influence public opinion. Critics argue that Foucault's theory presents power as being inescapable and oppressive, leaving little room for individual freedom or resistance. Eco-philosophy is an environmental philosophy emphasizing the interconnectedness of humans and nature. This concept was developed by Arne Naess, a Norwegian philosopher and environmental activist. Deep ecology challenges the human-centered view of the world and promotes an ecocentric perspective where all living beings, humans, animals, plants, and even ecosystems, are considered equally valuable and interdependent. At its core, deep ecology asserts that nature has intrinsic value beyond its usefulness to humans. This means that forests, rivers, and wildlife deserve protection for their own sake, not just because they provide resources or economic benefits. This philosophy has inspired environmental conservation policies, climate activism, and global sustainability movements, reshaping how societies view their responsibility toward the planet. Deep ecology revolves around several key principles that redefine humanity's role within the natural world. These principles guide environmental ethics, policymaking, and individual responsibility toward nature. Deep ecology recognizes that all living and non-living entities have inherent worth, independent of their usefulness to humans. A river is valuable not because it provides drinking water or generates electricity, but because it is part of Earth's natural balance. Protecting a rainforest isn't justified only because it produces oxygen or absorbs carbon dioxide, but because it is home to diverse species with an inherent right to exist. Deep ecology emphasizes that humans are part of a complex web of life. Every organism relies on other species and ecosystems for survival. This view promotes ecosystem balance and discourages actions that disrupt natural processes. Bees pollinate crops, enabling food production. If bees become extinct due to pesticide use, humans would face global food shortages. Their survival is interconnected with ours, demonstrating how even small ecological changes can have widespread consequences. Humans should only use natural resources at a rate that allows ecosystems to recover and regenerate. Overconsumption leads to environmental degradation, threatening both nature and human societies. The sustainable harvest of timber involves cutting trees while ensuring that new trees are planted, maintaining the forest's long-term health. Protecting biodiversity means preserving all species, not just those considered important for human survival. Every species has a unique role in maintaining ecological balance. Conservation programs aim to save endangered species like tigers or pandas, not just because they are iconic, but because their extinction would disrupt the food chains they belong to. Humans must reduce their environmental footprint by adopting simpler lifestyles and consuming less. This includes reducing waste, energy consumption, and pollution, ensuring a sustainable future for future generations. Switching to renewable energy sources, reducing plastic use, and adopting plant-based diets are ways individuals and societies can reduce their impact on the planet. This global treaty aims to limit global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius by reducing carbon emissions and adopting renewable energy sources. It reflects deep ecology's belief in shared responsibility for protecting Earth's ecosystems. This treaty promotes the conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of natural resources, and equitable sharing of genetic resources, emphasizing that biodiversity should be preserved for its intrinsic value. Transhumanism is a philosophical and scientific movement that explores enhancing human capabilities through advanced technology, genetics, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology. Its central idea is that human limitations, such as aging, disease, and even death, can be overcome by merging biology with technology. Transhumanists envision a future where biological evolution is replaced by technological progress, enabling humans to live longer, stronger, and smarter lives. Transhumanism is built on several key principles that guide how society could evolve through human enhancement technologies. These principles aim to improve physical, intellectual, and emotional capabilities while addressing critical challenges like aging and disease. The main goal of transhumanism is to transcend biological limitations. Humans are naturally constrained by aging, physical weakness, memory loss, and disease. Transhumanism seeks to overcome these challenges through technology. Prosthetic limbs are becoming increasingly advanced, offering robotic arms that respond to brain signals. In the future, full-body prosthetic replacements could become possible, allowing people with severe injuries or disabilities to regain mobility. One of the most ambitious goals of transhumanism is to extend human lifespan, possibly even achieving biological immortality. This involves technologies like gene editing, anti-aging therapies, and organ regeneration using stem cells or 3D printed organs. Biotech companies like Calico and Altos Labs are working on reversing cellular aging through cutting-edge research in genomics and regenerative medicine. Transhumanism envisions enhancing human intelligence through technologies like brain implants, neural interfaces, and AI-powered cognitive assistance. This could allow humans to process information faster, improve memory, and even interface directly with machines. Brain-computer interfaces, BCIs like Neuralink developed by Elon Musk, aim to connect the human brain to computers, potentially helping people with paralysis, memory loss, or brain disorders like Alzheimer's. Gene editing technologies like CRISPR-Cas9 allow scientists to alter DNA by removing or replacing faulty genes, curing genetic disorders and improving human traits like strength, intelligence, and disease resistance. Researchers have successfully used CRISPR to cure genetic blindness and are exploring applications in treating diseases like sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, and cancer. Transhumanism also involves cybernetic augmentation, where humans gain technological implants to enhance physical abilities. These enhancements include bionic eyes, hearing implants, and mechanical exoskeletons that allow humans to perform superhuman tasks. The cochlear implant is a widely used device that restores hearing for people with severe hearing loss. Similarly, bionic eyes like the Argus 2 retinal implant help visually impaired individuals regain partial vision. A futuristic aspect of transhumanism is the idea of mind uploading, where a person's consciousness could be digitized and transferred to a computer or a robot. This concept, though still theoretical, has been explored in science fiction and philosophical debates about the nature of identity and consciousness. The TV series, Black Mirror, and films like The Matrix and Transcendence explore scenarios where human minds are uploaded into virtual worlds, raising questions about immortality and self-awareness. One of the most promising applications of transhumanism today is the development of brain-machine interfaces for medical treatments. These technologies allow direct communication between the human brain and computers, offering revolutionary medical solutions. Brain-machine interfaces have enabled people with spinal cord injuries or paralysis to control robotic arms and even move their limbs using thought signals. In 2014, a paralyzed man named Giuliano Pinto used a mind-controlled exoskeleton to kick the opening ball at the FIFA World Cup, showcasing the potential of BMIs in rehabilitation. Deep brain stimulation implants have been successfully used to reduce tremors and improve motor control in patients with Parkinson's disease, restoring significant quality of life. Prosthetic limbs connected to neural implants allow amputees to control artificial arms or legs with their thoughts, enabling more natural movement and touch sensitivity. Scientists are developing memory-enhancing implants for individuals suffering from Alzheimer's disease or traumatic brain injuries, helping to restore lost memories or improve learning. Beyond healthcare, brain-machine interfaces could also be used to enhance human intelligence in everyday life. This could involve learning new languages instantly, uploading new skills like in the movie The Matrix, accessing the internet using just thought commands. While transhumanism promises unprecedented advancements, it raises several ethical, social, and philosophical concerns. Who will afford these life-enhancing technologies? There is a risk that only the wealthy elite will benefit, creating even greater social inequality. Critics fear that enhancing humans with technology could lead to the loss of human identity, blurring the line between human and machine. Gene editing raises concerns about creating designer babies with enhanced traits, sparking debates about eugenics and genetic discrimination. Technologies like mind-reading implants and brain-computer interfaces pose serious privacy risks, as they could potentially be hacked or misused by corporations or governments. Philosophers like Nick Bostrom warn about the existential risks of creating superintelligent AI, which could surpass human control, endangering humanity. Artificial intelligence ethics is a field that explores the moral responsibilities associated with the development, deployment, and use of AI technologies. As AI systems become more integrated into daily life, making decisions in areas like healthcare, finance, security, and transportation, ethical concerns arise about fairness, accountability, privacy, and human rights. The core idea is ensuring that AI serves humanity responsibly, while minimizing harm and maximizing societal benefit. AI ethics has gained global importance due to technologies like autonomous vehicles, facial recognition systems, social media algorithms, and automated decision-making tools. Industry leaders, researchers, and policymakers are engaged in ongoing debates about how to create ethical frameworks that guide transparent, fair, and human-centered AI development. As AI systems become more intelligent and powerful, they increasingly influence human lives and societies. Ethical AI development is essential to protect human rights, ensure fairness, promote transparency, assign accountability, balance innovation with regulation. Ethical frameworks for AI typically include key principles that help developers, companies, and governments align technology with societal values. AI should be designed to benefit humanity by enhancing quality of life, advancing medical care, and promoting economic development. AI-powered medical diagnostic tools can detect diseases like cancer or heart conditions early, improving patient survival rates and reducing healthcare costs. AI must be designed to minimize harm, ensuring that technologies do not cause physical, emotional, or social damage. AI-powered content moderation systems should filter out violent, hateful, or harmful content on social media platforms while avoiding over-censorship of legitimate expression. AI systems should operate without bias and provide equal treatment for all, regardless of gender, race, or socioeconomic status. AI hiring tools should evaluate job candidates fairly, avoiding discrimination based on race, gender, or background. Bias in AI models has been a serious issue, especially in resume screening algorithms that historically favored male candidates due to biased data. AI systems should be transparent, meaning people should understand how decisions are made. This involves clear communication about how algorithms work and why specific decisions occur. Loan approval algorithms in banks should clearly explain why a customer was approved or denied a loan. If the system rejects an applicant, it should provide specific reasons so the applicant can take corrective action. Humans must be accountable for AI's actions, especially when things go wrong. Developers, companies, and governments must take responsibility for ethical failures caused by AI. If an autonomous vehicle causes an accident, who is responsible? Is it the car manufacturer, the software developer, or the driver? Legal frameworks are needed to define responsibility clearly. AI systems should respect individual privacy, ensuring that sensitive personal data is collected, stored, and used securely and transparently. Facial recognition technologies have sparked concerns about mass surveillance and privacy violations, particularly when governments use them without public consent. One of the most widely discussed topics in AI ethics is the development and regulation of autonomous vehicles. These vehicles rely on machine learning algorithms, sensor data, and AI-powered decision-making systems to navigate roads, avoid accidents, and transport passengers safely. However, their use raises several ethical and legal challenges. One of the most famous ethical questions involving autonomous vehicles is the trolley problem. In this scenario, an autonomous car must decide between two undesirable outcomes in a potential crash. Should the car protect its passengers even if it means causing harm to pedestrians, or minimize total harm, even if it means sacrificing its passengers? If a self-driving car is faced with an unavoidable accident where it must choose between swerving into a wall, possibly killing its passengers, or hitting pedestrians crossing the street, how should the AI decide? Who should be held responsible if the outcome leads to deaths? When an autonomous vehicle causes an accident, determining accountability becomes complex. Should the blame fall on the car manufacturer for producing a faulty vehicle, the software developers for programming errors, the human driver, if present, for not intervening quickly enough? governments or regulators for approving unsafe technology. In 2018, a self-driving Uber test vehicle struck and killed a pedestrian in Arizona. Investigations revealed that the car's AI system failed to recognize the pedestrian crossing the street, raising questions about software design flaws, testing standards, and legal responsibility. Autonomous vehicles constantly collect data through cameras, GPS, radar, and LiDAR sensors. This data includes personal information like location, driving habits, and even recorded conversations inside the car. Ethical concerns include: who owns the data? How is it stored and used? Can hackers exploit it? The widespread adoption of autonomous vehicles could cause massive job losses in industries like truck driving, taxi services, and delivery jobs. Ethical concerns focus on economic inequality, job retraining, and the need for social safety nets to protect displaced workers. While AI ethics presents opportunities for positive impact, it also comes with major challenges. AI models are often trained on biased data sets, causing them to make unfair decisions that reinforce stereotypes or discrimination. Governments struggle to regulate rapidly evolving AI technologies, creating a legal vacuum where unethical practices can thrive. Establishing universal ethical guidelines is difficult due to cultural, economic, and political differences across countries. The development of AI-powered military drones and autonomous weapon systems raises serious concerns about the future of warfare and global security. Stoicism is an ancient philosophical school that teaches how to live a virtuous life by developing inner strength, wisdom, and self-control in the face of life's challenges. It was founded in Athens around 300 BCE by Zeno of Citium and later developed by philosophers such as Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. Among them, Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, became one of the most famous Stoic thinkers, thanks to his personal writings compiled into a book called Meditations. Stoicism emphasizes acceptance of hardships, emotional resilience, and living according to reason and virtue. In modern times, it is regarded as a practical guide for self-improvement, stress management, and mindfulness. Stoic principles encourage people to focus on what they can control while accepting what they cannot, helping them remain calm and grounded in life's uncertain moments. Stoicism is based on practical wisdom and focuses on the development of character rather than external success or possessions. Its key ideas can be divided into several guiding principles. The central idea of Stoicism is recognizing what is within our control and what is beyond it. According to the Stoics, only our own thoughts, attitudes, and actions are within our control. External events like illness, death, and other people's opinions are outside our control. The key to happiness is focusing on what we can change and accepting the rest with equanimity. If you are stuck in traffic, you cannot control the traffic itself, but you can control your reaction to it. You can choose to stay calm and use the time to listen to a podcast or practice mindful breathing. The Stoics believed that humans should live in harmony with nature, which means following reason and acting with virtue. According to Marcus Aurelius, living a good life means thinking rationally, making wise decisions, and acting with kindness and integrity. Virtues of Stoicism include wisdom, making good decisions based on reason; courage, facing fears and challenges with strength; justice, treating others fairly and with respect; temperance, practicing self-control and avoiding excess. If you experience failure at work, a Stoic response would be to learn from the mistake, improve your skills, and avoid becoming consumed by negative emotions like frustration or resentment. Mindfulness is central to Stoicism. Stoics encourage daily self-reflection to assess how well they lived according to their values. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations frequently reflected on his thoughts and actions, striving to improve himself each day. At the end of each day, journal about your actions, considering whether you were patient, kind, or rational. Identify where you can improve and commit to being better the next day. The Stoics believed in amor fati, which means love of fate. This concept involves accepting life's events, even the difficult ones, as necessary parts of our journey. Rather than resisting challenges, Stoics advise embracing them as opportunities for growth. If you lose your job unexpectedly, accept the situation and focus on finding new opportunities rather than dwelling on the loss. Use it as a chance to learn, adapt, and grow stronger. The Stoics often reflected on death as a way to live a more meaningful life. Memento mori means remember that you will die, not in a morbid way, but as a motivational reminder to live fully and value each moment. Knowing life is finite encourages people to act with urgency and focus on what truly matters. When dealing with stress about small inconveniences, remembering that life is short can help shift perspective. Use your limited time to create meaningful experiences rather than wasting energy on minor frustrations. Stoicism teaches that hardship is inevitable, but we can endure it by cultivating mental resilience. Marcus Aurelius led Rome through plagues, wars, and personal tragedies, yet remained a model of calm leadership by applying Stoic principles. During difficult times like a serious illness or personal loss, accept the pain but refuse to give up. Find strength through self-discipline, supporting others, and staying hopeful about the future. One of the most practical applications of Stoicism today is practicing mindfulness, being fully present and aware of our emotions without letting them control us. Mindfulness involves pausing, observing, and choosing responses rather than reacting impulsively. Imagine you receive negative feedback from your boss. Instead of reacting defensively or taking it personally, a Stoic approach would involve pausing and taking a breath, separating facts from emotions, understanding that criticism is feedback for improvement, not a personal attack, responding calmly by acknowledging mistakes and working toward improvement. Similarly, if someone experiences the loss of a loved one, Stoicism would encourage accepting the inevitability of death while honoring the memories shared. Marcus Aurelius himself dealt with personal tragedies, including the loss of his children, yet continued to lead Rome with calm resolve and inner strength. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, written as a personal journal, offers timeless philosophical insights on how to live with dignity, compassion, and calmness. Some of his most famous quotes include, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Focus on what you can control. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Cultivate positive, rational thinking. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Live according to your values. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Respond to injustice with virtue." Stoicism has remained highly relevant in modern life due to its practical guidance on stress management, emotional resilience, and ethical leadership. Military leaders, entrepreneurs, psychologists, and even athletes use Stoic principles to develop mental toughness and stay focused on long-term goals. Modern practices like cognitive behavioral therapy are also rooted in Stoic ideas about managing thoughts and emotions through reason. Stoicism, as practiced by Marcus Aurelius, teaches us how to face life's challenges with wisdom, virtue, and calm resilience. Its emphasis on self-reflection, mindfulness, and emotional control helps people lead meaningful lives despite hardships. In a world full of uncertainty and stress, Stoicism remains a timeless guide for enduring adversity with strength, compassion, and clarity of mind.